Insane Karen goes COBRA KAI on a teenage girl because Jesus said it was okay. I'm an assistant teacher at a martial arts school. I've been working nonprofit as a teacher and have been certified at the school for 5 years now. I've seen all sorts of people from all sorts of backgrounds, but I've never had an encounter like the one that I had with an insane Karen last year. Our summers are busy, lots of students of all ages training to compete at a national level. We get more than our fair share of irresponsible narcissists dumping their demonic children on us, but what I can easily say is that the worst kind of people to teach are the kind who think they know what they're doing. Karen had been attending classes for about a week, and she was already unhinged, refusing to take instruction, ignoring other students, and blaming us teachers for going too hard on her. Note that we weren't doing much more with her than most of our toddlers can do. She was also being weirdly evangelical, not to mention downright disrespecting and insulting the other students and instructors. I remember her primary excuse as to why she wouldn't take instruction was, "You're smaller than me. Maybe you didn't know this, but I'm stronger than you." She also liked to say, "I'm older than you, and you should be listening to me." But my personal favorite was, "Only Jesus can tell me what to do." Karen was not a small woman. She was easily 6 feet tall and weighed over 200 pounds. She did all she could to rough up any of her fellow students. She would go for the face, punch below the belt, and even throw her weight on people much smaller than her. One time I watched in person as she shoulder-checked a teenage girl without even waiting for the round to begin. The girl had the wind knocked out of her. She was crying and struggling not to lose her lunch. I intervened, telling Karen, "Ma'am, that wasn't okay. You didn't wait for the signal, and you chose a partner outside of your age group." Karen immediately went on the defensive. "I thought we were supposed to fight like we mean it." "That's true," I said, "but you still need to treat your partner like a partner, not an enemy." "You're not the boss of me, little boy." Note that I am 22. I was in full uniform with my black belt on, and an easily noticed patch that said "Instructor" was sewn onto the front of my shirt. So I was not okay with her calling me little boy. I told her, "Ma'am, if you want to continue training with us, you need to respect the limitations and restrictions we've placed to protect you and our students." Karen didn't want to hear that. "Well, it's not my fault I'm better than everyone here. I guess God chose me to be the best." I don't know if I should be proud of what I did next, but I kind of am. I said, "Okay, ma'am, I'll be your partner this time. No holds barred. Show me what you can do." She rolled her eyes and went to her spot. Before the signal, she bum rushed me. After I dodged it, I gave her a warning punch that barely grazed her. She went off like a firebomb. She began yelling profanities and slurs, trying to grab my hair, spitting on me, and throwing wild haymakers. So wild, it was clear that she hadn't been paying much attention in class. Eventually, I started hitting back. I started soft, but she refused to let up. For reference, I'm 5'6" and 140 pounds on a good day. I was not doing much damage, but she still screamed like an insane person. She eventually started going for the face again, even using her fingernails like a cat. I gave her one good shot to the stomach, and then, when she finally got her hands on me, she tried to choke me by trying to grab my neck. I'd had more than enough at this point. I sidestepped and landed a spinning heel kick that landed right above her jaw. She went limp and keeled over. When she came to, she tried coming at me again. Thankfully, 3 bigger guys stepped in and stopped this raging hippo. She was kicked out of the school that day. She later tried to sue the school, but her court visit got her laughed out of the room. She ended up paying us $4,000 in damages and was required to do 60 hours of community service. The judge ruled that because she had signed a waiver, she couldn't hold the school responsible, so she had no real case. To this day, that spin kick knockout was the most satisfying lesson I have ever taught. F you, Karen. I hope you enjoyed the hospital bill. I'm going to skate right on by the evangelism in this story. The comments had a lot to say about it, but it's clear that religion isn't to blame here. I'll admit that I haven't read the Bible in full, but I've seen Jesus Christ Superstar, and I don't recall a scene where Jesus shoulder checks a teenager. Let's face it, this Karen didn't need God to feel entitled. If she'd never even heard of religion, she would have found another excuse. Some people think they can do what they want, even when it hurts another person. Maybe this original poster's lesson feels overboard, but it's clear that talking things out wasn't going to teach Karen a thing. And sadly, even getting humiliated taught her nothing. She's probably out there right now trying to put some poor barista in a headlock for not giving her a venti when she ordered a grande. The overpopulation of Karens in this world is frightening enough on its own, but now they're being trained. The Karen uprising is coming, folks. Thank goodness we have people like this OP to protect us from the front lines. Entitled coworkers leave me alone at work for 47 hours straight, then say I didn't work hard enough. I used to work at a 24/7 restaurant and pub. During one of my overnight shifts, someone called in sick for the morning shift. Shortly afterward, the boyfriend of the girl who was supposed to work the second shift calls her in too. Now, on slow days, there's only one of us waitressing. The two managers and the owners were on a family vacation together at the time, so the kitchen manager is the only supervisor there. He tries his hardest to get replacements for these shifts, but he can't. I started to feel bad, because this guy was in tears and just wanted to go home to his new baby. So I said I'd cover both shifts. The kitchen manager is grateful and leaves, which means there's now no manager here. 2 hours before the overnight waiter was supposed to arrive, he calls in sick. Now I know this flapjack, and he's just drunk. So I call around to everyone, but there's no one answering. Now I can't even leave, even if I wanted to. So I'm stuck working the overnight shift as well. Guess what happens next? If you're guessing both the morning and afternoon waitresses called in sick because they'd been out drinking and were hungover, you'd be right. The kitchen manager starts trying to find someone, but he can't because they keep ignoring his calls. So I'm stuck for another day. At this point, my brain is gone. It's jelly. I can't walk right because I'm so dizzy. I haven't stopped moving since I came in at 6 p.m. 2 days ago. When the kitchen manager leaves for the day, he tells me, "Don't worry about bar prep. Don't worry about stocking. Just sit here." And when overnight shows up, tell him that given the circumstances, they'll have to deal with all that tonight. Especially considering I saw the jerk at a bar when I was driving home last night. Note that this overnight is friends with the other people who called in sick. They were all buddies and decided they'd rather go to a party instead. So I do what the manager told me to do. I sit, because I hurt and I'm tired, and I'm angry that people effing suck so bad. Then Andrew arrives, the overnight waiter. I can leave. Hurrah, yes? No. Andrew says, "Stock isn't done. Nothing's done." I said, "Yep," because I was told I didn't have to. I've been here for literally days because you and your gang wanted to goof around. Manager said to leave it for you. Take this bill, I'm going home. I should explain that last bit. When staff would come in and eat, the bill would just have to be passed from waiter to waitress until management came in. Obviously, I didn't go 2 days without eating, so to get that comped, Andrew has to take the bill off my screen and put it on his own. I can't just push the bill through to him from my side. But he refuses to take it. This fight goes on for 40 minutes, during which Andrew called the manager with the new baby, waking them both up. Andrew was told that I would not be stocking or doing anything else for him, and to take the freaking bill off my screen so I could clock out. The manager then told him that they needed to have a serious discussion the next day since he'd seen them all drinking at another bar as he was driving home. Andrew just hangs up. I'll take the bill when you finish your job. I was done with this. I promised him he'd be in for it tomorrow, and cashed out, then made sure the kitchen manager knew why the counts were going to be all messed up, since Andrew never took my bill. I then took my excessively crazy tips, because when most people heard how long I had been working, they tipped really well. Andrew got fired for skipping work to party with those 2 day shifters who had called in sick twice in a row, for refusing to do what a manager had told him to do after I'd relayed the manager's orders, for calling a manager with a new baby late at night to complain about the orders he'd been given, and then for refusing to follow the manager's rules after they'd been directly given to him by the manager himself. I made about $600 in tips during those 47 hours that I was working. Plus, once the main manager got back, she gave me $1,000 for doing so good while she was away. So it ended well for me. It's a good thing this original poster was at least rewarded for her efforts, but this is all still terrible. When people falsely call in sick, they don't think about how hard they're making someone else's job. It's not clear if they didn't realize OP was going to be stuck working for 2 days straight or if they literally just didn't care. What they did is inexcusable either way. And the thing is, I wouldn't call someone a bad person for wanting a day off. I wouldn't call someone a bad person for not realizing the effect that would have on others. But showing up and then telling the person who had been there 2 days that they needed to do more work to make your own job easier, that makes you a bad person. Whoever's been hiring for this restaurant really needs to vet their employees better. The fact they managed to wind up with 3 servers this unprofessional is startling. Hopefully, OP gets some better coworkers now that the others are being dealt with. Until then, at least she has a bit of extra spending money. Entitled locals invade our campsite and say it's okay because they live nearby. A few months ago, towards the end of the season, I went camping with my friends. No kids, no husbands, just us 3 ladies all on our own. The spot we chose to go camping was on a cliff with a great view of a canyon and the creek at the bottom. The area allows dispersed camping, and there are very few spots with that view, especially since it's first come first serve. When we arrived, only one spot was left, with the view hidden behind the tree line, but still only a few feet away. The only way to access this view from our site was by walking straight through our camp, but I think there are other spots you can hike to without going through anyone's campsite. On our first night there, a couple of men walked into our camp saying they wanted to see the view. I wasn't super comfortable because you can't trust a stranger in a forest, and they were in our space. But in the end, they were only there for a few minutes and left. Not a big deal. But if you've seen almost any movie about out-of-towners alone in the woods, you know the first encounter with the locals is but a prelude of what's to come. The next day, we went to watch the sunset on the cliff. We had left all our stuff lying around camp. Well, soon we start hearing cars, dogs, voices, and screaming kids. 2 cars pulled up to our camp and walked right in, making themselves comfortable. We ran back to see that all of our space was completely invaded. Kids under our tarp and running around the tent poles, people around our fire, the whole 9 yards. We had a small puppy with us that was terrified of the new dog now barging into its personal space, but these people didn't care. A woman explained that they live nearby and love coming to see the view. I was in absolute shock at the sheer disrespect. Of course, everyone is allowed to enjoy nature, and this was a public spot, but you have to respect if someone else is there first. At the very least, have the decency to ask. It was well after sunset before they finally started leaving. As they were heading out, the same woman said they'd be coming back later that night to see the stars. My friends were so angry, and I was still in shock. As they were loading up their car, I ran up to them and said the first thing that came to mind. I asked one of the men, "Hey, when you come back later, are you planning on bringing the kids?" "I'm not sure," he said. "Why is that?" "Well," I said, "the thing is, we're out here to do some pretty heavy substances. We're starting in a few minutes, and things might get pretty wild, so I wouldn't want to expose children to that. You, as adults, might be able to handle it, but I don't know what will happen. I should mention that I don't actually use anything illicit, and I only even drink occasionally. But the good news is that it worked. They never came back, thank goodness, and hopefully they learned something about respecting people's space." I'd be on OP's side anyway, but these people scared a puppy? Heck no. Try frightening my dog when we're 10 feet away from a cliff and see what happens. Take over as many campsites as your entitled little heart desires, but leave the puppy out of it. It's adorable that OP thinks these people might have learned something. They didn't. They went home and watched the stars from their porch while complaining about these 3 awful women who had the audacity to get wild in the woods that they so clearly owned. But you can't change everyone. At least this original poster found a clever way of keeping these jerks from stomping all over their stuff again. Sadly, that's really the best you can do sometimes. Insane Karen says, "I'm destroying the country by trying not to get COVID." I used to work at a health food store during COVID. On my last day, I was wearing a mask. The people that frequent this store are often anti-maskers, but I have other jobs, so I can't really afford to get sick. So this lady walks in to make a purchase. As I'm ringing her up, she asks if the store makes me wear a mask. I tell her they do not, and she asks me what I'm wearing one for. I just tell her the same excuse I tell everyone else in that store who asks me about it. My boss at my other job wants me to be safe when I'm out. This lady goes freaking crazy. She talks about how masking is communism and how she wants to see more people in nature. She tells me that she never supports businesses that require masks because there's no evidence behind masking. This whole time, I'm trying to figure out a way to get her to leave. Then she goes on a rant about how kids are so stupid these days, and how all of them are dumbed down by depression and anxiety. I'm Gen Z, and she's a boomer, so I was quite angry with her implication that all kids just aren't smart. Karen then tells me that medications are just used to dumb people down and poison them, and that the water supply has been poisoned with synthesized snake venom. Note that during some parts of this rant, she is literally screaming at me. She tells me that she was a teacher in the 70s and that she left because they were medicating kids with Ritalin and she just couldn't take it. She also said some crazy cannibal stuff that I don't feel comfortable repeating. She just kept going on, talking about communism and how I'm contributing to it, and how it's the downfall of society. She then says that we don't need to worry about fascism, which is a pretty hot take. This lady tells me that she would never let doctors or medications anywhere near her, and that if they even tried to get close, she's a good shot. She then asked me if I believe in the Second Amendment, which seems irrelevant to whether I agree with a person shooting their physicians. When I finally see her slowly edging closer to the door, I breathe a sigh of relief. But then, she tells me she's writing a book about how she cured cancer with her womanly rage and how women are superior to men. Before she left, she ranted at me one last time for my mask. I have never had so much social whiplash as I did in this one conversation. I didn't even know people like that really existed. Naturally, a lot of people in the comments think this woman might have been less of a Karen and more just someone who needed mental treatment. To me, it sounds like she might just be dehydrated and delirious from not drinking her snake venom for whoever knows how long. But the really alarming detail is that so many anti-maskers apparently visit this health store. Have Karens never heard of irony? Thankfully, COVID seems to be mostly behind us. But if it ever comes back, here's a good life tip. When someone asks you why you're wearing a mask, run. They are not about to engage you in a pleasant conversation about facial accessories. This is a person who believes masking should be a choice, but that you have no right to make the choice they disagree with. And if you're at work, there's little you can say that won't either make things worse or even get you in trouble. It sounds like OP just let this woman go on ranting. Honestly, I'm not sure if there was an easier way to handle her. But what do you think? Would you have done something different in this situation? Leave us a comment and let us know what you'd do in OP's shoes. Click one of the videos on screen right now.